there, Gryphon. So for essay number 2, Eric and I have decided to do some screencast feedback. And so I was lucky enough to get yours to do some screencast feedback for. And so I just wanted to walk through your essay, talk about what's working really well, and then leave you with some suggestions or things to think about as you continue developing your writing. And so let me just start off by saying that overall, we found your letter to Julie from Kant to be very, very impressive. You demonstrated in this letter a very high comprehension of Kant's ideas, which is definitely not something that comes easy, I think, for most students. I would say you were, in the top 3 to 5% of the class in terms of how thoroughly you seem to really grasp these ideas and how well you were able to explain them to Julie in a way that, as a non-philosopher, she could understand. Eric and I were especially impressed with the first formulation and how well you applied that to not only lying but also cheating. And lying was something we practiced in class, so we sort of expected everyone to do a pretty good job on that one. But cheating was not. And so you, by taking those ideas and applying them so well to cheating, you really demonstrated that you understood what this first formulation was all about, and this whole idea of universalizing laws and how that can shake out to deem an action illogical, and if it's illogical, then it's not permissible because we are all equal moral beings with equal capacity to rationalize and reason. And so if all of us can't act by a certain rule, then it's certainly not fair for one person to make themselves an exception. And you captured all of that really well. One thing that you did that I really don't think any other student has done before that was just truly excellent was the way that you phrased this idea here. You said people would know that they were being lied to because, after all, they would do the same thing to you, right? And so this idea that, like, we're all lying to one another, we wouldn't be able to ever have any truth because, each and every one of us is acting that way. And so why would we ever expect anything different? It's just something about how you teased that point out just went a little bit further than I think what most students usually do. And so we just found that really impressive. Your second formulation, equally strong. This line is a very small point, but Eric and I thought the nuance was excellent. If you said you were taking us for granted, if it wasn't S, then it would be someone else. Excellent point, because that just reinforces this idea that S is just a thing. He's not a whole, free-thinking, rationalizing person to Julie. He's just something to use. And if it wasn't him, if it was somebody else who had responded to the ad, then Julie would be with that person during that time. And so you really hammer home that idea of objectifying people or using them as just parts to get our needs met, and not really treating them as a whole person. And so just really nice job. Really accessing, comprehending, and articulating Kant in this letter. We were having a really good time reading your essay and talking about it. My biggest suggestion, I think, for this letter and other writings of yours that I've seen is to really work on paragraphing, this idea of giving the reader some breaks as they're reading, because just kind of cognitively, it's a bit overwhelming for a reader to see a whole page of text like this without seeing them broken up into paragraphs. And so, I often tell students to look for where the natural paragraph breaks occur, but sometimes that's not always obvious. And so maybe you want to start with an outline. This is what I'm going to say in my intro. This is what my next paragraph is going to be about. This is what my third paragraph is going to be about. And so if you kind of like piece out your organizational schema that way, then you may have better luck kind of organizing your ideas and paragraphing them. Now, in this first letter to Kant, I actually think your ideas are really well organized. They come in a logical sequence. It's just that there's no paragraph breaks, so the reader never has that mental break where it's almost like taking a breath. It's like, okay, I need to do that, and now I can dive back in. So I've highlighted a couple places where I thought it would make sense for you to start a new paragraph. And I'm not sure what's going on with the formatting here. This is like a hanging indent, which is what you'd actually use when you're doing a works cited page. So we want it to look more like this. And I guess we don't need a line break there. So, yeah, for some reason it was just formatted as you would format a works cited page. And so this is probably more what I'm talking about, this having some paragraph breaks in here. It makes sense to start a new paragraph here because you've introduced your claim, right? This is your overall thesis claim that cheating and lying to your husband is wrong because it breaks both formulations of the category imperative. Awesome. That's your overall argument. That's what you're going to develop in the rest of your essay. And so then when you dive into the body paragraphs, you're going to break this down. So here you're breaking down the first formulation. So it makes sense to start a new paragraph there because you're kind of shifting your focus and narrowing it on that one thing. Later in the essay, you make this great transition here where you say cheating and lying also break the second formulation of the categorical imperative. And there's a couple of clues in this sentence that suggest to me that it needs to be a new paragraph. So the first one is the word also. So when you say also, it kind of suggests that we're moving on to something else. And so that's one clue that you need a new paragraph, and the fact that you're introducing a whole new idea. New idea, new paragraph. So new idea is the second formulation. We're done talking about the first formulation. This is a good place to start a new paragraph. You give your reader that little break, take a breath, and then move on to the next paragraph. Now, I looked for whether there was a break for a conclusion, and there's really not. It kind of bleeds into the end right here, and that's okay. I would probably say, something you could work on is thinking about a conclusion paragraph and what would that paragraph have, maybe some reinforcement of the key ideas that came up in the rest of the letter, but I think it works. I'm not too worried about that here. So just having some of those paragraphs really change the look and feel and the experience for the reader. So looking down at your essay, kind of similar. Your essay, what I see going on here is a little bit less organization than I saw in the first one. In the first one, even though we were missing paragraph breaks, you had all the points logically sequenced. Here, the ideas are a little more jumbled, and that's why I've pulled in the highlighter. So you can see what I've tried to do is use different colors to represent different ideas or types of ideas that might go together. And so everything in yellow here really has to do with consequences, like what could happen in the future, Julie? If you played this out, what are the potential consequences? And let's take a look at that. So all of these ideas in yellow are about consequences. The idea here in blue, this is really just one time that you bring this up, this idea of finding a solution. That's a really interesting idea. And that could probably be teased out into its own paragraph. So there could be a whole paragraph about, well, what are solutions? Certainly Julie and her husband aren't the first couple to ever have these kinds of problems. I'm sure there are plenty of other rational solutions out there. Maybe there's counseling options. Maybe it's okay if Julie's cheating, but maybe her husband wants that to be part of the solution. They have to really talk it through and work it out. And so I think that idea could get fleshed out a little bit more. Right now it's kind of just thrown in, squished between these other ideas. This idea here in the green really has to do with the integrity of their marriage, and this whole idea of do you respect this person? Do you love this person, right? And what do you want to put into a marriage? So down here you start making some other points that are very similar. This idea of you should be a team, you should be manipulating your husband. You should be working together. That's what a marriage is all about. And so those two ideas in green really do tie to each other. So as you can see, just visually represented here, you kind of see how ideas are bouncing around. So it would be really hard to do what we did in that first letter and just create natural paragraph breaks here. What this letter would need is an entire reorganization. So again, outlining could help, where you could say, well, I want to spend one paragraph talking about consequences. Julie, what if your husband found out? I want to use another paragraph to talk about solutions. Julie, here are all the things you may not have thought of. Here are all the potential solutions. And then maybe you want to end with that green idea. Julie, let's talk about the integrity of marriage. This is what you entered into. These are the agreements. This is the love and respect that you bring to this and that your husband brings to this. These things you really want to forfeit, So peeling those ideas out from each other, putting each one of them into their own separate paragraph would really go far to help your reader just experience your ideas, take them in, feel that those ideas are cohesive and not kind of competing with each other throughout the whole letter. So those are just some things to think about for Essay 3. I think if with Essay 3, when I look at your draft, I can definitely give you some more of these organizational type of comments. And if at any point you want to send me questions or send me, a page from one of your future essays in this class, then I'm happy to work with you on paragraphing and organizing as well. So, okay, overall, really awesome work, Gryphon. You should feel super proud of the high-level thinking and the great writing that you did for essay number 2, and I look forward to seeing more of your work.